How many times can you use the same words to tell a woman that you love her? Love her so much that there is nothing you wouldn't do for her if it's in your power. Loving her so much that you would kill for her. Loving her so much that you are ready to die for her. And if she is the most beautiful woman who has ever paid attention to you, how can you tell her about her beauty so that your words do not sound empty? After all, she was the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. I've done this for my wife, Colleen, for the past 23 years. We got married on May 27, 1995. It was Saturday, a beautiful spring Saturday, and Colleen looked great. She always looked beautiful. But that day she looked more radiant than I had ever seen her. We were in love. I fell in love with her at first sight. It was at a reception with the dean when we were in college. I noticed her at the other end of the room. She stood there with a drink in her hand, sipping it and looking around. Our eyes met. She smiled. I smiled. I almost ran across the room, ignoring several professors and other students, to get to her before anyone else did. She blushed with embarrassment when I offered her my hand, greeting her and introducing myself. Her name was Colleen O'Donnell. She was Irish. She was red, a real fiery Irish redhead. Her cute little nose was covered in freckles. Her lips were curved into a smile and were pale pink. She didn't wear makeup, but she was still beautiful and sexy without it. After I introduced myself, I was speechless. Colleen just watched me try to find something to say. Another guy came up and introduced himself. He was one of the athletes present at the reception. Colleen, to my complete amazement, apologized to him and basically told him to get lost. My eyes widened in surprise. "What?" she asked, sipping her drink. "I don't know what to say," I said. "Just tell me about yourself. It shouldn't be hard, after all. You're the one who's going to be talking about." Colleen laughed. "I guess you're right, but I'd rather hear about you." "You're the first. Then I'll tell you all about myself," she said, taking my free hand and leading us closer to the wall behind it. "Well, I'm John McNally. I already told you that. I'm from Chicago. I received a scholarship here for a project I worked on in high school. I was born on February 1, 1974. It was Friday. Now I am a sophomore and studying to become a mechanical engineer. I plan to get at least a master's degree. Then I hope to work for NASA. I like that." "Tell me about yourself. Don't just share your resume," Colleen said. "Tell me how you feel about yourself. Tell me how you feel talking to me. Tell me about your mom and dad and any siblings you may have. I can find out about the things you said by looking at your resume in the student register." I cleared my throat. He took a sip of his drink. I turned and placed it on the table behind me. I turned around and looked Colleen in the eyes. "I'm really nervous standing here talking to you. Or is it with you now? You make me nervous just by your appearance. I'm not the most confident person I could be. I've always been a little shy of women and girls. You are so beautiful, you look amazing, and it makes me extremely nervous. But I wanted to know you when I first saw you. My mother is a redhead. My dad is blonde. Both are Irish. God, you're so beautiful," I said breathlessly. Colleen laughed and blushed as she watched me. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "Thank you. You look good too. I'm not saying you're handsome, but you're very cute, and I like your blonde hair." "Now it's my turn," she said, sipping her drink again. "Okay, first of all, I'm from Glen Ellen, west of Chicago, south of the airport. I was born on March 27, 1974, so we are the same age. It was Wednesday. I'm studying to become a business manager. I plan to become a CEO in some large, well-known company, for example, Xerox or IBM. Standing here talking to you, I feel nervous. I'm almost afraid. Your eyes are so blue and piercing, they almost scare me, making me think that you can read my thoughts. I am also insecure and know that I have to become like this. My mother is German, my father is Irish. I got red hair from my father. I'm afraid I got my hips from my mother. You are very cute, and I would like to get to know you better." I blushed listening to her. I cleared my throat. "Thanks, Colleen," I said, "and your thighs look beautiful to me." Colleen blushed as I looked at her hips. "Thank you, John," she replied. At that moment, the bell rang, signaling that it was time for dinner. I took Colleen's hand, and we walked into the huge dining room, finding 2 seats next to each other. Most of the chairs had name cards in front of them, but there were empty seats at one end of the table. I was sure I had my assigned seat, but I didn't want to leave Colleen. My friend called out to me from the other end of the table. Then they called out to Colleen. We both ignored them. Soon the waiters began placing salads in front of everyone. Colleen and I ate and talked. She asked me about engineering. She nodded when I answered her questions. We talked about different things, but I still don't remember what. After dinner, we were free to go wherever we wanted. I asked if she wanted to go somewhere. She shook her head. I just want to go back to my dorm room and take off this outfit and these shoes. My feet are killing me. Why don't you come with me? Once I change into more comfortable clothes, we can go for a drink. Maybe play darts. Sounds good, I said. Colleen smiled and took my hand. I shuddered at her touch. She led me out of the banquet hall and across campus to her dorm. Once in her room, she began to take off her clothes. I turned away. She laughed. You are a gentleman, she said softly. I try to be. My father told me that I had to be, or he would give me a good beating when I was little. I think it stuck, I replied, rubbing my face with my hands. Well, turn around, please, she asked. I turned around and gasped. She was naked and had a strange look in her eyes. I shook my head, closed my eyes, and turned away again. John, I want you to look at me. In fact, I want you to come here and touch me. I don't have a roommate. I want you naked too. I gasped. Turning around, I began to undress. Colleen smiled and helped me. We spent the next 2 hours just touching and kissing. I wasn't a virgin, but Colleen insisted, and I just wasn't ready. She said that she was a virgin, and after our short conversation, she decided that I was the guy she would give herself to. For the next 3 years, we almost never separated, except during classes. I was amazed that in my arms, and in my bed was the most beautiful woman in the world. We both got jobs we liked in the Chicago area and got married 6 months later. There was one sad side to our marriage, the lack of children. We both underwent examinations, we were examined, and x-rays were taken. Nothing. All tests showed negative results. There's nothing wrong with either of us except the inability to conceive. There were nights when Colleen cried into her pillow and I held her in my arms, crying too. Apart from these moments, we were both very happy together. We talked about adoption, but we both decided that we really wanted to have our own child, not someone else's. We discussed in vitro fertilization, but tests showed that that wouldn't work either. We tried everything to have a baby. Nothing helped, but we were still happy together. It was our 24th wedding anniversary. Well, it was the Saturday night after our anniversary, which was Wednesday. On Friday, we stayed at home. We had dinner, watched a little TV, and went to bed. Saturday was our holiday. Her younger sister Maureen hosted it at a local bar not far from our apartment. All our friends were there. All of our relatives came to dinner on Wednesday, so it was just our friends and a few relatives like Colleen's sisters and my brother and their companions. Music was playing, people were talking. Colleen then pulled me onto the small dance floor in front of the jukebox. She flowed smoothly into my arms, and we danced close. I love you, she said, kissing my neck. I love you too, I said, kissing her neck. She shuddered at the touch of my lips. We danced until the end of the song. When I looked around, there were several other couples on the dance floor with us. Colleen took my hand and led me off the dance floor. We had our own table with her sister and Maureen's husband. As I was sitting Colleen down, some guy asked her to dance. She smiled at me. I nodded. He took her hand and led her to the dance floor. I sat down with my back to the dancers. Maureen looked at me strangely. What? I asked. Would you like to watch your wife dance? With another man? She asked. Why would I do this? To make sure he doesn't take advantage of the opportunity. What? This guy is a womanizer. He chases after any skirt, married or not. Well, I better intervene then, I said, standing up and heading towards the dance floor. When I saw them, his hands were on Colleen's ass. I had two problems with this. First, both of his hands were on my wife's ass. Secondly, she didn't mind. When her face turned so that she saw me, her eyes widened and she stepped back from the womanizer, covering her mouth with her hands. I just stood there with my arms crossed. Colleen just looked at me with a look of horror on her face. I beckoned her with my finger. She nodded and walked towards me. The guy grabbed her hand. She winced in pain. I grabbed him by the collar of his shirt and pulled him back hard. He fell on his back, looking at me. He started to get up. "Don't," I shouted. "Who are you anyway?" I looked at him. There was rage and hatred in his eyes. "I'm the guy who sleeps with your cuckold wife," he said, grinning at me. I looked at Colleen, my wife of 24 years. She just stood there like a deer in the headlights of a fast-moving car. While I was looking at her, the guy stood up and rushed at me. Colleen's eyes widened. I pushed back with my elbow. The guy ran right into me and my elbow. Now he was knocked out. I turned to Colleen. "Well?" I asked. Damn, dear," she stammered. "So is this true?" Colleen nodded, looking down at the floor. "I am so sorry." "Yes, it's clear how sorry you are. Don't." I stopped and just looked at Colleen. I turned to the guy who had just ruined my life. I leaned towards him. "If you ever hurt my wife again, or even come close to her, I will come down on you." "Got it, freak?" He just looked at me with a smirk on his face, so I hit him with that grin. He rolled away and stood up, clenching his fists as he walked towards me. Then Colleen stepped between us. "Don't you dare, you bastard," she screamed at him. He was about to hit her, but fell to the floor, writhing. Maureen stood behind him with a stun gun in her hand, the wires attached to his back. "Maureen!" Colleen screamed. Colleen almost walked up to him, but changed her mind. She turned to me, tears streaming down her cheeks. I just shook my head. "Who is he, and why is he here today?" I asked. "I don't want to talk about it here. Go home." "I have a problem with this because I don't want to be alone with you because of what I might do to you." "So what will you do?" she asked sarcastically. "I'll kill you," I growled softly. "Oh," she muttered. "Maureen?" I shouted. "Yes, John." "Could you and Brian come with us so I won't be tempted to hurt your sister while we talk?" "Certainly." "Brian," Maureen screamed, turning to him. The four of us walked to my apartment. Once inside, I collapsed on the couch and just stared at Colleen. She stood in front of me, then fell to her knees, looking at me. Tears streamed down her face. I was also on the verge of tears, but my rage was so great that I could not cry. "Well?" I asked. She looked at Maureen and Brian. They sat on the couch with me, just looking at her. Maureen raised her eyebrows and tilted her head towards her sister. "Well, little sister?" Maureen asked. Colleen closed her eyes, sobbing. "I'm sorry. This will not happen again. It was easy." "Just sex?" I asked. Colleen nodded. "Why?" I growled. "I don't know. I honestly don't know why I left my marriage with a scumbag like him. Honestly, I do not know. Was he better than me? Have I neglected you? Did I do something to offend you?" I almost screamed. No, none of that. I don't understand why." "It was because it was different, more exciting, what?" Now I was calm and did not shout at her. "It was different. But no, it wasn't any more exciting than what we were doing." "Then why did you cheat on me?" "I don't know. I really don't know," Colleen said, still sobbing. "Who is he and where did you meet him?" I asked. "Do you have to say this?" "Of course, definitely," I shouted. "Are you going to beat him up and go to jail? I don't think I can live in prison with you." "I just want to know. Now tell me," I growled. "His name is Jimmy Wexler, and I met him at a department meeting. He's the new guy in the IT department." "How many times?" demanded I. Oh God," Colleen stammered. "How many times have you slept with him?" I shouted. Five times. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," she croaked. Maureen couldn't resist, stood up and hit Colleen on the back of the head. You stupid fucking bitch, Maureen growled at her sister. Brian sat Maureen back on the couch. I just stared at Colleen. There was silence in the room for a good 3 minutes. There was a knock on the door. I growled at Colleen as I stood up to open the door. I opened the door and was not surprised to see the police and the scumbag. I just turned around and waved for the police to come in. When the bastard tried to enter. Not his. He's not welcome here. He's the one who left the bruises on my wife's arm, I said, pointing at Colleen. You stay there, or else, the policeman said, grabbing the scumbag by the arm and handcuffing him. Now sit and be silent. Phil, why don't you take him to the squad car? Another cop said. That's even better, Phil said, pushing the bastard in front of him. Now, who's who? Asked the policeman. Well, I'm John McNally. This is my wife, Colleen. Her sister, Maureen Cullen, and her husband, Brian Cullen. The policeman quickly wrote everything down in a notebook. When he finished, he looked at all of us. Now, Mr. Demise McNally, you hit Dan. What's his name? Jimmy Wexler, I said. Yes, exactly. Did you hit him? Yes, but only after he hurt my wife, I said, pointing to the bruises on her arm. It's clear who hit him in the stomach. It was me. I had my back to him, and he attacked me. I just pushed my elbow back, and it ran into him. Who used the stun gun? He asked. I am, Maureen said. He was going to hit my sister. It's clear. Where did you get the stun gun? I bought it at a gun store. The policeman nodded. Tasers were legal for citizens in our state. Did any of you witness these events? I was, and it was exactly as John and my sister said, Colleen interjected. We, too, and it was just as John said, Maureen and Brian said together. What caused all these events? The policeman asked when his partner returned. He groped my wife on the dance floor. She stepped away from him, and he grabbed her hand. She winced, and I pulled him away from her. He fell, got up, and rushed at me. You know the rest. Where was he when you hit him? He tried to get up and come at me again, so I hit him. How many times? Once. Everyone else nodded, confirming my words. Do you want to file a complaint against him? Asked the officer. No, not really. But if he touches my wife again, I will protect her with all my might. Understood. It will be delayed for 72 hours unless you change your mind. Thank you for your cooperation, the officer said, turned and left with his partner. Now to you, my dear Colleen, I said as the door closed. Colleen lowered her eyes to the floor. I just stood there and looked at her. Fury raged inside me, but my heart screamed at me not to forget the love I have for her. 5 times she slept with this bastard. When did she have time? When? I asked. Colleen closed her eyes and shuddered. She knew what I meant. At lunchtime on Fridays, she whispered, Oh my God. Where? Why? She asked. Where, bitch? I shouted at her. She shuddered again. At a motel near work, she sobbed. Who paid? Colleen winced again. I paid, she whispered. So, not only did he persuade my wife to sleep with him, but he also made me pay for having you. What the hell were you thinking? I shouted. I don't know. God, I'm so embarrassed. I was so naive. God, I'm so sorry, Colleen cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. Since you met him at work, you no longer work there. And he won't work either when I talk to his boss. On Monday, you will go and submit your resignation letter. But I love my job and the company I work for. Colleen sobbed. Okay, you can keep your job, but you'll have to pack up because you won't be living here anymore, and we won't be married. No, God, no, please, no, Colleen wailed. Then you'll quit on Monday. Oh God, I've ruined my life and my marriage, she cried. Colleen sat there crying and sobbing, tears streaming from her eyes and down her beautiful face. She covered her face with her hands and continued to sob for the next 10 minutes. Maureen fidgeted, wanting to approach her sister, but Brian whispered to her to stay away for now. Finally, Colleen looked at me, tears still streaming down her face. "I'll quit on Monday. I really want to be your wife, and I'm so sorry that I cheated on you. I have no idea what came over me, John. I love you so much and, oh God, I really don't want to lose you. Can you ever forgive me?" Looking at her, I simply lowered my head and closed my eyes. I didn't know if we could save our marriage. I didn't know if I wanted to touch her again. But leaving her would be the first step on a long road to repairing our marriage. Who am I kidding? Things will never be the same. I knew it, and she knew it. Could we survive what she did? I really didn't know. The pain I felt in my heart right now was the most intense I had ever felt. I do not know yet. Forgive you for breaking your marriage vows. How can you survive this? Don't bother answering because I can barely look at you, let alone listen to you say that we'll be okay again. I just stopped talking and sank to the floor. I didn't lose consciousness, I was just tired. Tired of the anger, tired of the betrayal, tired of seeing pictures in my mind of Colleen and Jimmy Wexler in bed together. I wanted to throw up, but I restrained myself. Colleen started to move towards me, but her sister pushed her back onto the couch and knelt next to me. "Are you okay, John?" she asked, placing her hand on my shoulder. "I'm fine, I just need to rest. Take your sister with you, if you don't mind. I just don't want her to be here right now. Please," I asked. Colleen sobbed and cried again. Maureen stepped away from me and looked at Brian. He nodded. He and Maureen helped Colleen up and led her out the door. Now I was alone. Getting up, I went to the bedroom, undressed, and went to bed. Despite the thoughts racing through my head, I fell asleep fairly quickly. I must have been asleep for a long time when I woke up. It was light, and the sun was high in the sky. I staggered towards the kitchen and looked at the wall clock. I shook my head. It was only 8 in the morning. I made myself some coffee and sat at the table waiting. I noticed that the message light was on, indicating that there were voice messages. Getting up, I took the phone and pressed the button to listen to messages. The first message was from Maureen, simply saying that they had arrived home safely. The next 6 were from Colleen. I deleted them without listening to them. The coffee was ready. I poured myself a cup and sat down at the table, thinking about what and why my wife decided that cheating on me was normal. What did I do wrong to make her want this? Why did she want this? I couldn't find the answer. Taking my cup of coffee, I went into the office where we had a computer. Once I logged in, I opened Colleen's email. When I saw how many letters there were from Wexler, I couldn't believe my eyes. He sent her more than 1,000 letters. I wondered why Colleen didn't delete them. I found that she didn't respond to most of them. They were full of vile and disgusting things he wanted to do to her. To those letters that she responded to, she wrote that she did not take his words seriously and that he should delete them. Why didn't she delete them herself? Then I found a letter from an anonymous source. It was clear from the title that it was from her boss. She forwarded him letters from Wexler. It looked like Wexler was going to be fired on Monday. Poor Jimmy. At that moment, the phone rang. The display showed Maureen's number, but it was probably Colleen calling. "Hello," I said, picking up the phone. "Oh God, John, please don't hang up." I hung up. A few seconds later, the phone rang again. I turned off the sound and ignored the call. I continued going through Colleen's email. This Wexler was truly a nasty guy. What he wrote in his letters was disgusting. I copied all the letters onto a flash drive. Then I went to the website of the company Colleen worked for. I used the employee portal to access the employee list. I found Wexler, and as luck would have it, he was married and had 2 children. His wife's name was Connie, and she was a homemaker. Perhaps she knew nothing about his affairs. His home number was listed. I wrote it down. I think there should be a full disclosure of everything he did in his marriage. I wonder if he called his wife from prison. The policeman said he would be detained for 72 hours. It won't be out until Monday. I took the phone and called his wife. She answered the first call. "Hello," she almost screamed. "Mrs. Wexler?" I asked. "Yes, it's me." "My name is John. Do you know where your husband is?" I asked. "No, and I'm terribly worried. Do you know where he is?" Yes. He's in prison now. Why? He attacked my wife last night. Besides, he cheated on you with her. I don't know how long this went on. What? I do not believe you. He would never do this to me. From what I've heard about him, he's chasing every skirt. Oh God, no. I'm sorry, but my wife admitted to having an affair with him. I have about 1,000 letters from him to my wife. I can forward them to you if you want. Yes, please. Do you know when he will be released from prison? The police were going to hold him for 72 hours if I didn't file a complaint. I'm not going to file a complaint. I think 72 hours is enough for what he did to my wife last night. Besides, I hit him in the face. Send me these letters, please. And can I have your mobile number? I may need to talk to you some more. Of course, I replied, giving her my number. Thank you so much, Connie said. Is there anything else? Yes. Looks like my wife was sending your husband's emails to her boss. And according to the letter from the company, your husband will be fired on Monday for violating the company policy on office romance. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Oh my God. Sorry, I said again. Not your fault. Goodbye, John, and thank you. Call any time. We hung up. I stared at the wall for a long time. I felt sorry for Connie. I really felt sorry for her children. I didn't feel sorry for Jimmy. He brought this on himself, just like Colleen. I just sat at the kitchen table, trying not to think about anything. My marriage was falling apart. The woman I loved betrayed my trust. My life was in turmoil. I really loved her, so much that now it hurts. Even when I thought about what she had done, my love for her did not wane. I called Maureen. Hello, Maureen said. It's me, I said. Yes, I know. Caller ID, she laughed. Right, you can bring her home. Do you want me to take her, or? No, I'll bring her home. She. Yes, I asked. She's not okay. What do you mean? She hasn't stopped crying since we brought her here. About? Well, bring her back. I won't harm her. I've already gotten over that part of my anger. Okay, give me 20 minutes. I'll be here, I said. When the doorbell rang, I stood up and slowly walked towards the door. I hesitated for just a moment. When I opened the door, I saw Colleen and Maureen. Maureen supported her sister. I just shook my head and stepped aside. Colleen looked at me. I'm so sorry, she wailed. I waved my hand and shook my head at her, and she fell silent, sagging on her sister. I caught them both so they wouldn't fall. I picked Colleen up and carried her to the couch. Maureen closed the door and joined her sister. I just stood there looking at my wife. I wonder how long she will remain my wife. I did not know. She may or may not remain my wife forever. Well, I'd better leave you alone, Maureen said. You don't have to leave if you don't want to, I said. No, I have to. I have to leave. Sorry, I just can't stand her anymore, Maureen said, nodding toward Colleen. Bye, John. Maureen was out the door before I could say bye or hug her. I looked at Colleen. She just sat there like an empty space. You are hungry? I asked. Eh? Colleen muttered. You are hungry? I asked a little louder. No, thank you. I'm fine. I shook my head. You don't look okay. Who cares? To me. Now get up and go to the kitchen. I'll cook you something, I said sternly. Nodding, she stood up. I was there for her to lean on. She looked at me with sadness in her eyes. I helped her get to the kitchen and sat her down at the table. I looked in the refrigerator. Nothing. I looked in the cupboard and found chicken noodle soup. I took out a bowl and poured the soup into it. Then I put the bowl in the microwave for 45 seconds. The soup was the perfect temperature when I took it out. I took the spoon and placed the bowl in front of Colleen. She looked at the soup, then at me. A tear rolled down her cheek. Thank you, she said, taking the spoon. Please, I replied. She began to eat slowly. I took out the crackers and placed 3 in front of her other hand. She looked at them. She took one and began chewing it slowly while she sipped the soup. Suddenly, I felt so sorry for her and I didn't know why. Perhaps I still not only loved her, but cared for her so deeply that I might be willing to forgive her. I shook my head to clear my thoughts and sat down next to her. Colleen sobbed as she ate. It took her half an hour to finish the soup and crackers. Colleen? Yes, she replied. Are you okay? She looked at me with sadness in her eyes. I don't know. I know where I am and who I am with, but it doesn't feel real. Oh God, John, I did something terrible, she sobbed, tears streaming down her face. I know. Do you know why you did it? I asked softly. Looking at me, she had a blank look in her eyes. I know what I did, but somehow I don't know why. I didn't love him. I love you. I don't even think I liked him, now that I think about it. He was different. It wasn't more exciting, just different. Every time I felt guilty, dirty, slutty. I hated myself. When I saw him at work, I wanted to throw up until he started talking to me. I knew it was so wrong, what we were doing. I even sent his letters to my boss. He will be fired for violating corporate policy. What day is today? She asked. Sunday evening. Why? I asked. Monday. He was supposed to be fired on Monday. Well, he won't get out of jail until Tuesday, I said. Exactly. Well, okay. Should I still quit? No, not if they're going to fire him. His wife will probably kick him out of the house too. I sent her all the letters he sent you. I told her that you two cheated on her. It serves him right. Are you going to kick me out? Colleen asked. Not yet. You are tired? Don't know. How did I get home? Your sister brought you, I said softly. Exactly. I remember her yelling at me for being stupid. She also hit me several times. My shoulders are probably bruised. Colleen rolled up her sleeve and looked at her hand. There were black and blue spots on her upper part. I leaned in to take a closer look. These were marks from the blows of a small hand. Do they hurt? I asked, pressing on one of them. Oh, yeah, they hurt, Colleen said, pulling her hand away. Serves you right for what you did to me, I said softly, without anger or malice. I know, Colleen said, groaning as I continued to examine her bruises. You'll be fine in a couple of days, I said. Will you hug me, please? I started, and then I just hugged her gently. Thank you, she sighed, almost collapsing into my arms. I picked her up. She opened her eyes and looked at me. No fear, only surprise and sadness. I carried her into the bedroom, our bedroom, and carefully laid her down in bed. Slowly and gently, he took off her clothes. When she was completely naked, I covered her with a blanket. I stroked her hair. Have a rest. We'll talk again. Fine, I said. Okay, darling. Thank you. See you later, I said on the way out. I love you, she squeaked, afraid of my answer. I know. Rest. I closed the door and returned to the office. I lay down on the sofa and tried to think. Nothing came of it. Deep down, I hated what she did to us, to me. But my heart was full of love and sadness. I felt bad that she did that. I was sorry that I saw them together. I wished I still loved her. If I didn't love her, it would be easy to throw her out for cheating. But if I didn't love her, we wouldn't be together. I woke up with a jerk. It seemed like someone was trying to strangle me. I opened my eyes. Colleen was next to me, her head on my chest. I started crying. It's time to let it all out. All the sadness and sadness. All the abomination and betrayal. All the rage disappeared somewhere in the dream. Colleen raised her head and looked at me. I continued to cry. Tears flowed down my cheeks. Colleen started crying too. I hugged her and she hugged me. We cried together for a long, long time. At some point, we both fell asleep. Every time I woke up, I started crying again and woke up Colleen, who also started crying. Then I woke up, it was dark, and Colleen wasn't there. I didn't start crying, I started worrying. Worry about your wife. I got up and went to look for her. I found her in the kitchen. She was preparing dinner. I smiled. She was still naked. She was beautiful. Except for the places where her sister had hit her and where Wexler had grabbed her arm, her skin was flawless. She was the most beautiful woman I have ever known, ever seen. Dinner will be ready in 5 minutes. Go wash yourself. Dinner attire is nude, so take your clothes off. Colleen laughed as she stirred something in a pot on the stove. I nodded and went to the bathroom. I washed my hands and face. Smiling, I returned to the kitchen. Dinner was on the table. Colleen sat in her seat, and I sat in mine. She looked at me with concern in her eyes and face. "Prayer?" she asked. "Yes, please. I'd love to hear what you have to say," I told her. She took a deep breath, still looking at me with that expression. I nodded, not smiling, but not frowning either. She nodded in response, took a deep breath, and exhaled slowly. "Dear God, I would really like to thank you for my husband, who has the patience of a saint, and I hope he will forgive me my sins. I cheated on him and deliberately broke our marriage vows, for which I am very ashamed. I really hope that you forgive me too, Lord. I also want to thank you for the abundance we are about to receive. Amen." Colleen crossed herself, as did I. She looked up and studied my face. I still didn't forgive her for what she did, but I felt better about us. How long this lasts is up to her. We both started eating. They barely said a word while they ate. I had nothing to say to her, but she kept her mouth shut. I was sad, but she was not only sad, but also scared that I wouldn't want her anymore and would throw her out of my life. After dinner, I helped clear the table. Colleen thanked me and hugged me. I just patted her on the shoulder. She sighed and stepped back. Looking at me, she waited. I closed my eyes, trying to remember happier times. Opening my eyes, I hugged Colleen. I closed my eyes, trying to remember happier times. I opened my eyes and pulled Colleen into my arms. She sobbed, hugging me tighter. I squeezed her in my arms and kissed the top of her head. "I love you so much," she whispered. "I know what you love. I can't say the same words to you yet, but I also feel love for you. You just know you've lost some of it," I said. "Thank you," she sobbed, hugging me even tighter. I just chuckled as she squeezed me. Closing my eyes, I held her tightly. We stood there for a long time. Then the doorbell rang. Colleen stepped away from me and ran into the bedroom. I smiled as I watched her butt jiggle as she ran. I went to the door. Looking through the peephole, I saw her mom and dad. I sighed as I opened the door. I just looked at them with sadness. "Oh God, no, John." "She doesn't," asked her mother. Her father just growled as he entered. Colleen stood in the living room in her robe. She couldn't meet her parents' gaze. Her mother walked up to her, stood right in front of her, and slapped her. Then she turned and went to the kitchen and sat down at the table. Her father walked up to his daughter, took her by the shoulders, and looked into her eyes. "What is wrong with you? You were brought up better," he said. Colleen just hung her head and sobbed at her father's disappointment. He let go of her shoulders and walked into the kitchen. Colleen looked at me, then ran into my open arms, crying. "Did you call them?" she asked. "No, honey, I would never do that," I answered honestly. "Maureen, that bitch." "Family," I said. Colleen went limp on top of me. I took her to the kitchen and sat her down at the table. I sat down on the fourth chair at the square table. What happened that day was not gentle. Colleen's parents lectured her. I held her hand the entire conversation. Finally, her parents ran out of words. They never once called her a nasty word or referred to her as a bitch. She was always Colleen or daughter to them. It was late when her parents left. I took her hand and led her to the bedroom. I simply pointed to the bed. She nodded, threw off her robe at the end of the bed, and crawled under the covers on her side and lay down. I undressed and lay down on my side. Colleen clung to me as I turned off the light. "John?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. "What will happen to us?" "Don't know." "What would you like?" "It's both easy and difficult," I said. "What?" "It would be easy if, when you woke up in the morning, this never happened. The difficult part is that we worked together to overcome your betrayal." "Oh God," she said quietly. "Yes, oh God," I replied. "Can I say something?" "Sure, but will I like what you have to say?" "I love you." I will never stop loving you as long as I live. I hope you will love me too. I just lay there thinking about what she said. I could have answered her with a sarcastic phrase about how much she loved me that she just went and slept with some creep to show it, but I didn't. I didn't say a word because any word that came into my head would have hurt not only Colleen, but myself. So I just kept quiet. I knew I loved her. I knew I would probably love her my whole life. Will we be together? Not if she cheats on me again. She will be expelled so quickly that she will be dizzy a month later. But for now, I wanted to help us get through this. We made it to our 30th anniversary. 6 years ago, Colleen cheated on me. In the end, I forgave her, but I didn't forget her. How can you forget? I didn't forget anything, especially something so important. For now, our lives are back to normal. I still love her as much as ever. She still loves me. I haven't suspected her of cheating since she did it, although I had no idea at the time. She quit her job even though I told her she didn't have to. Jimmy Wexler was dishonorably fired. He will have a hard time finding a new job in his field at a reputable company. His wife divorced him, and she received custody of the children. He left the state, leaving her without money. Colleen asked me if we could help them. I agreed. Her salary goes directly into Connie's bank account. I make enough for the two of us so it doesn't interfere with our lifestyle, and we've made a friend with 2 beautiful kids. Connie and the children are often at our house. Colleen fell in love with them. We also visit Connie's house often. No, I didn't sleep with her, even though Colleen said I should. I simply told her that I would not break my marriage vows, and she stopped insisting. Connie is a wonderful woman, but my vows mean more to me than an affair with a beautiful woman, even if she is now a friend. My wife is still too important to me to cheat on her.